number 2 for the Glen Walter Area Water and Wastewater Servicing Master Plan. We did do a presentation at 5 o'clock for members of the public who tuned in to this Zoom meeting. We do have additional members of the public who have tuned in. So we'll give another minute or two for any other late stragglers, and then we'll go through the presentation. I'd like to just note for those people who have joined that the session is being recorded and will be made available to the public. It's 25. Right. Since we're recording, we're going to proceed right to the presentation, and if there are latecomers, we can always provide them with an update of that information. So again, welcome to this second presentation during this Public Information Center number 2. I'd like to again welcome the members of the public as well as the members of South Glengarry's senior administration and council for this this session, who are all here to review the information that's being presented, as well as to hear the information and the feedback from the public on what's being presented. So we had our first public information session back on June 20th of 2020. It was again on a Zoom platform. During this session, we did describe what the challenges are that the Glen Walter area is facing as far as the municipal infrastructure and the servicing of that area. So this is our second point of contact. Following this session, we will be receiving feedback from the public and from agencies that will be incorporated into the draft master plan that will then be circulated to the public one last time for a 30-day period before it is finalized, and the project goes to the next phase of the development. So if we can review what the status of the existing system is for the Glen Walter area. We've previously identified issues related to both the water and wastewater servicing within the Glen Walter serviced area. And the first item is that the water storage is insufficient to provide fire flows for the serviced area. So an additional water storage vessel is required in order to provide for fire protection services, as well as to maintain the pressure within the water distribution system should the Glen Walter water treatment plant have to be removed from service. The Glen Walter water treatment plant itself has very limited potential to support additional growth, and so does the Glen Walter wastewater treatment plant as far as limitations in its capacity to support further growth within the distribution system. So in an attempt to ensure that the project steering committee takes into consideration the potential servicing for all of the study area, we worked with the township administration to put a potential timeline together on how quickly the areas and the zones within the overall study area could potentially be developed. So the drawing that's on the screen right now, all the areas that are in green represent the areas that are developed. Now these areas may be developed on private services or on municipally supplied services. It is not differentiated on this drawing. The yellow areas on the drawing are to be developed within the next 5 years. The orange areas are within the next 10 years. The red areas are within the next 30 years. The purple areas are within the next 50 years. And anything that is in light blue is estimated to be developed beyond the 50-year horizon of this study. So we developed a servicing plan for the 30-year window, which led to the extension of services in the vicinity of the Place Saint Laurent development, Country Club Estates on Purcell Road, the Boundary Road servicing area up by Highway 401, and the extension of municipal services throughout Sapphire Hills and Bayview Estates, as well as areas immediately surrounding those service areas. After the 30 years, the idea was to then extend the municipal servicing to the entire study area. When we started doing the evaluation of this plan, it was found to be too cost prohibitive. And also based on feedback that had been received from the residents of the privately serviced areas, there was little to no interest in receiving municipal services at this time. So we proposed to refocus our efforts into developing a 30-year plan that focused on developing areas in and around the Glen Walter core. So on this slide, you'll see this is the areas that we're proposing to have serviced, and we are extending services further to the west beyond the Place Saint Laurent subdivision development, continue extending services up Purcell Road to the Country Club Estates development, and then extend to the east in areas that could potentially be developed within the next 30 years. So the next step we did was we took a look at the growth rates in Glen Walter and compared them to the growth rates that are currently being experienced in Long Sault. And for the last few years, the average number of building permits being issued in the Glen Walter area was approximately 10, which represents a growth rate of about 1% per year. When we contacted South Stormont and the counties to find out how many building permits were being issued in Long Sault, it was determined they were being issued at a rate of about 41 units per year, which represented a 3.2% growth rate. And the reason that we've estimated the growth rate was much higher in Long Sault than in Glen Walter is that the areas that are being developed in Long Sault are easily serviced by the municipality for water and wastewater. So we want to make sure that the area here in Glen Walter can provide those municipal services and encourage the same type of growth rates that are being seen to the west. So we currently have approximately 440 units that are serviced by the municipality. There are an additional 72 units that are being committed to having municipal services, which would bring the total commitment to 512 currently. So if we applied a 3% growth rate over the next 30 years to that number, we would see a total number of homes being developed of 1,243, which represents a number of building permits being issued at a rate of 27 units per year. So what would we need to do in order to support this growth within the area? We took a look at the water distribution system and wastewater collection system to begin with, and identified that there is insufficient water storage to meet the current demands for that growth, as well as the inability to provide fire protection. So we have included the installation of a water tower in order to provide a reservoir that's within the water distribution system that can be used to meet those fire flow requirements, as well as can be used to supply water to the distribution system if any repairs have to be done at the water treatment plant. So while we were studying that, WSP had undertaken preliminary modeling of the existing water distribution system and wastewater collection system, and found areas of the water distribution system that could not support fire flows. So there are sections of the existing system that need to be upgraded in order to support fire flows. And similarly, there were areas of the wastewater collection system that would need to be expanded or increased in capacity in order to meet the extra development hydraulic loadings to the wastewater collection system. The existing services being provided by the water treatment and the wastewater treatment plant, we have identified are inadequate to support the additional growth we're looking for. In addition to that, both of those facilities are located on the same parcel of land. So we will be requiring to look at land acquisition for the expansion of one of those services, and then the expansion of one of those services on the new property and the expansion of the other on the existing property. Now, the cost to do all of this work is approximately $45 million. And if we look at distributing that cost between the existing users of the system as well as the growth component, we're looking at a cost of approximately $37,000 per lot to make this project happen. If we were to take that amount and debenture it over a 30-year period at the rate of about 2.32%, which is the interest rate that's being offered by the Ontario Ministry of Infrastructure for municipal loans, it'll be a cost per household of about just over $1,700 per year for that 30-year period. Now, the township is seeking funding for some of the works. There was a program that was recently made available through the federal and provincial governments called Investing in Canada's Infrastructure Program, the Green Stream Intake Number 2, which was funding for a project of up to $5 million, which the township has now applied for. And that project scope was the installation of the water tower, as well as the replacement of some of the water mains so that we can obtain the fire flow requirements within the distribution system. So there's a potential of receiving 73% funding on that value. And the township will continue to lobby the government for funding for the remainder of the project. And historically, the funding from the federal and provincial governments have been in and around the 66% funding level. So if we were to apply these two programs to this project, the cost per lot would be reduced from just under $37,000 to just under $12,000 per lot. And if we were to debenture that over the 30-year period at the same interest rate, the annual cost per lot would be just under $600 for that 30-year period. Now, if the township decides not to implement this project, there are still issues with the existing infrastructure in Glen, Walter. And those issues are that there is limited capacity for the water and the wastewater treatment plants to support additional connections. So we will be having to limit growth within the Glen, Walter area. The water tower will still be required in order to provide fire flow protection. The water mains would still need to be upsized. The sewers that have been identified as being undersized will need to be upgraded. The mechanical and the electrical systems at the wastewater treatment plant are nearing the end of their useful design service life in the next 10 years. So there'll be a requirement to invest in that infrastructure at the wastewater treatment plant to bring it up to today's standards and to address end of life requirements. The concrete at the wastewater treatment plant also has a useful service life of about 70 years, which means there's about 30 years remaining in its useful life. So there'll be a large project at the wastewater treatment plant in the next 30 years. And if we were to do a cost estimate of what it would cost to make these upgrades without being able to support additional growth within the Glen, Walter area, we're looking at the existing residents having to pick up a cost without funding of just under $24 million, or a cost of just over $53,000 per lot. And if we were to debenture that over a 30-year period, the cost per lot would be just under $2,500. Now, if we were to apply the same funding programs to this project, the cost per lot would drop to just under $7,300. The total project cost would drop to just under $7.3 million, and the cost per lot would be just over $16,500, which would bring the annual cost over a 30-year debenture to just under $800 per lot. So the next steps. So after this meeting, we will be looking for feedback from the public and from the agencies that can be taken into consideration when finalizing this servicing plan. So we will be publishing a draft servicing plan for comment in a 30-day review period. Upon completion of that circulation, the master planning process will be complete, and it'll be the recommendation to the township that they immediately initiate a Schedule C environmental assessment for the plant expansions of both the water and the wastewater treatment plant. It is very important to have this document completed so that if an additional funding program becomes available to the municipality, the cost will be known or better refined for moving this project forward. Now that, as indicated earlier, the township has applied for funding for the elevated storage tower and water main replacements. So that announcement of whether or not the township will be successful, we will hear in the early spring of 2022. So that concludes the information that we have provided for this master planning update. I'd like to open the floor to the public if there are any questions that they'd like to bring forward.
So for any members of the public in attendance who have any questions or would like to make a comment, please just raise your hand using that function. And if we see your hand up, I'll give you the ability to unmute yourself. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands at this point, Marco.
All right, well, perfect. We will make this presentation available on the township's website. And if any member of the public would like to provide a comment or feedback to the township, I believe the contact at the township would be their clerk, which is Miss Kelly Campo. So please reach out to her and she can provide you with her email address, or feel free to submit a written letter if you're interested in doing so. We're more than happy to hear from you and to take your feedback into consideration when finalizing the recommendations in this report.
And further to Marco's comments, anyone from the public who wishes to make a comment, you can call the township office or go on our website on the Contact Us page to find the contact information for myself, Kelly Campo, the clerk with the township.
Thank you all very much for attending.